Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. And today we have Philip Wiley that's joining us. 1 second for Philip's intro. So today we have Philip Wiley. Philip, tell us about your background.
Sure. So this January made 21 years in cybersecurity. Before that, I spent 6 years as a sysadmin, and I've been on the offensive security side of things for a little over 12 years. And I'm also former adjunct instructor. I used to teach at Dallas College. I am the concept creator and co-author of the Pentester Blueprint, starting a career as an ethical hacker, a book on pen testing careers. I do a lot of conference speaking and workshops, and I love to mentor and help people that are trying to break into cybersecurity.
Well, you're the perfect guest for our show. Why don't you start by telling our audience how you even got into tech and cyber and then how you grew their career, sharing any tips and tricks that you learned along the way?
Sure, really, because before I even got into, I worked doing AutoCAD. So during my AutoCAD years, I learned about sysadmin roles, and what they did looked at a lot more interesting. And so one of the tips I like to share people, one of the stories I like to share, especially for those just trying to get in. When I was going through CAD school, I really didn't have any previous computer experience because this was in 93 to 94 that I was going through CAD school. So I had no real experience on a computer outside of playing video games on a computer. And back then, before the internet, so I was using some of the different online services and stuff that they had before the internet. So I really didn't have any experience with it. So when I was in CAD school, I learned different basic computer skills, how to use the different operating systems. And then once I got out into industry doing AutoCAD, I found that I picked up on the new software features that were coming out before my peers did. So I have a knack for learning software. And then also I just really got interested in wanting to be a sysadmin because this company I work for, they brought in a sysadmin and I saw how well that paid compared to being a AutoCAD draftsman or AutoCAD drafters. I taught myself how to build computers. I took a Novell NetWare certification course. And also during that time that I found I had the knack, we had one of our on-site IT staff that wasn't able to figure out how to get Windows 95 to print on a Novell network. He couldn't get it to work. I was able to figure it out. And the first time I was ever called a hacker was because of that. He was frustrated that I was able to figure it out and he wasn't, and he was the IT guy. So just building computers, getting into it, at that point, I just started following my passion. When I went into a CAD drafting career, I was working retail sales. I was working doing manual labor, working in restaurants, washing dishes, cooking, running cash register, all these other things, but none of that really interested me. And so just this opportunity to get into a field around technology opened my eyes to the opportunity. So I didn't know about IT because when I was in high school, we had some IBM PCs in our PC lab, and then we also had some Mac computers in the art lab, but I just didn't really know about that area. It was really more it wasn't widely offered those courses, and it was something I never knew about and never ever thought I would be going into IT. And then at that point, there was no really one knew about cybersecurity. So once that point, I just started following my interest and my passions. So I worked as a sysadmin for a little over 6 years. And the company I work for, another story and tip I like to share was I was working for this company. I acquired my CISP. I'd got one of the NSA certifications, InfoSec assessment methodology certification. And the company I worked at knew I was interested in cybersecurity. January 2004, they moved me over to the cybersecurity team. And so that's one of the things there is a lot of times if you're in an organization, sometimes it can be easier to move into roles than being an outsider. So with my experience, security wise was securing servers. So I really didn't have dedicated firewall experience, all this experience really required to be in cybersecurity, but they knew my work ethic and they were really big on promoting people within and growing people's careers. They really wanted people to stay around for a while. So one of the points there, sometimes you're within an organization, maybe you're on help desk or something like that. You want to move into cybersecurity, let people know that you want to move into cybersecurity. And sometimes when those roles open up, it could be an opportunity for you. In some cases, it's maybe less expensive. Maybe it's cheaper for them to promote you into that role and you're gaining experience. So that's one of the things I really like to share. And then as I worked in cybersecurity, we had a new CISO that got hired about a year and a half into my career. So I was doing firewall administration and intrusion detection administration, some vulnerability scans, and some risk assessments. But when this new CISO came in, he divided us up into different groups because we were all doing the same thing, all doing firewall administration, risk assessments, vulnerability scanning, and he put me on the application security team, and that's where I really found out about pen testing and got interested in it. And whenever I got laid off in 2012, I applied for a job in pen testing. And another lesson here is I didn't check all the boxes, the laundry list of things they were looking for that pen testing role, but a couple things that really stuck out to the hiring manager. He liked people that learned on their own time and like to build stuff. So he really always taught us to build things, not so much hack things. If you understand how to make things, how to build systems, you'll understand the security better. Therefore, you'll be able to assess the security and hack into it better. So that and just my passion about security and wanting to move into pen testing helped me land the role. I really wasn't qualified for the role, but I applied for it. And that's what I like to share with people. Apply for the roles, no matter whether you think you're not qualified or not. Only if you have a couple things, maybe nothing on there because you never can tell when there could be a personality fit or a culture fit. Maybe you just really hit it off with that manager or their team. And sometimes that's what it takes. So one of the things I like to share, just like I said, is to continually to, apply for roles, whether you think you're have the required skills and knowledge. So do it anyway, because it doesn't hurt anything. Worst case, you get rejected, you don't get the job. But if it works out like me, you get lucky, you get the job.
So you move from system admin to firewall management to application security. And then along the way, it sounds like you became a book author, an adjunct professor, a fabulous podcaster, may I mention. Why did you decide to do all these extra activities outside of work?
It just really interested me. What kind of got me started down that path with some of the I've always done worked on learning things outside of work because back in my sysadmin days, I taught myself web design. And so I used to have a side hustle, a business on the side after work hours doing web design. And I just always learned things after hours because IT and technology was my hobby. So just my way to learn. And what really got me into the podcasting part was back in 2018 is when I started teaching at Dallas College. So in 2018 was a very important year for me and me pivoting my focus was through teaching because I started teaching at Dallas College. My wife was going there for their digital forensics program and they were looking for someone to teach a pen testing course. Fortunately, I was able to get hired on there. And so I really found that I had a passion for teaching. I had helped people over the years sharing different resources for studying for the OSCP or starting careers in pen testing. And then once I got into teaching, I really found what I felt was my calling, helping people. So I did that for a little over almost 4 years, a little over 3.5 years. And during that, I started a meetup group called the Pwn School Project to offer a way for people to learn about cybersecurity, even if they didn't have the money to go to a college and just a way to explore their interest. And so one of the things did with my students was I would tell my students, if you did bug bounties, then you can get pen testing experience that can help you possibly land a pen testing job. So Bug Crowd, right before DEF CON and Black Hat in 2018, started the Bug Crowd Ambassador Program. So I applied for that. I got accepted. And during my time back in 2019 at B-Side San Francisco and RSA, I had the gentleman that was the CEO of the company at the time and their VP of marketing. I was having a conversation with them at one of their events they were hosting there. Jason Haddix was doing his bug bounty methodology workshop at this restaurant, a little event outside of RSA. And they were talking to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a webinar series on pen testing?" It was called A Day in the Life of a Pen Tester. And I did a 5-part series for that. It was really interesting. And that's what got me interested in podcasting. And then my first podcast was with Chloe Mistog and Alyssa Miller called the Uncommon Journey podcast. We were doing that through ITSP Magazine. Then, as busy as those two are, and then along with myself, trying to schedule our three schedules along with guests got pretty difficult. So we podcast lasted for about a year or close to it. And ITSP Magazine said, "Hey, are you interested in doing your own podcast?" And so I started the Hacker Factory podcast. And one of the things I really learned, I love helping people. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about the podcast and the book is the way it's helped people. So people I never get to meet. So I help a lot of people through connecting with people in the community. But what the podcast has done, as well as the book, is enabled me to connect with people that I probably never would have connected with, to be able to share this information. Because how the book came about was I was in the Tribe of Hackers Red Team book, and Wiley Publishing reached out to me and asked me if I had any ideas for any books. And I'd been giving this talk that came out of my lecture at Dallas College that was on starting pen testing careers and about pen testing, just all the prerequisite knowledge about the role and how to get started. And I turned that into first gave that lecture in January of 2018, but by November 2018, I turned it into a conference talk called the Pentester Blueprint. And I gave that talk at many conferences. And so whenever I was asked about writing a book, I thought this would be a great idea because at the time, there were no books out there on breaking into pen testing, how to get started in a pen testing career. So I felt like this is good information to share. And so that's where the book came about. So a lot of things have really come from me wanting to help others. And it's really the nice thing about this is going into it, I really didn't expect anything out of this, but just the karma, the universe, whatever you call it, the things, the benefits you get from that, the connections you make with people is just life changing for myself. And so it's been a great journey. And that turning point in 2018 has been awesome and has really improved my life for the better.
And as the instructor, someone that kind of gives advice to the next generation, you often see that people assume getting into cybersecurity that there's the first move in is always being a pen tester or being an ethical hacker. How would you advise folks to consider all the different aspects of cybersecurity before they go down one particular journey?
Sure, I would advise anyone to check out all your opportunities first because number one, if pen testing's your passion, pursue it. If you can't get it your first job, don't give up. Because for me, I was 6 years a sysadmin. I was in security for about 7 years or longer than that before I got my first pen testing job. I did several roles before I became a pen tester. So realize that it's not the easiest to get into, but don't give up on your dreams. But sometimes it's easier to move in from different areas. So out of all the things I did before becoming a pen tester, that was the most helpful was being a system administrator because I was administering Windows servers, Linux servers, also Novell NetWare servers and networks. So I got that experience and it helped me tremendously because you don't have to be a sysadmin. You don't have to go through all these different roles if you want to get into cybersecurity or pen testing, but to be able to have that technical skills you need. So maybe you don't have to be a sysadmin, but have sysadmin level skills. Because if you ever get a shell or command line to a server when you're doing a pen test, if you don't understand the command line, it's going to take a lot of Googling. It's going to really slow you down. So you really need to understand the technology and security before you can assess the security or hack into something. And I would recommend looking at all different types of roles because one of the stories I like to share was one of my former coworkers at US Bank. When I started, he was on the pen test team, but prior to that, he was on the desktop support team. He had been taking SANS courses for digital forensics. That's what he thought was his dream job. He'd been taking all these courses through SANS for digital forensics, and he decided when the next time came around to take another course, he thought, I'm going to take a pen testing course this time because maybe it will make me better at digital forensics. He ended up taking from learning the pen testing. So he took the course, fell in love with pen testing, and he's been pen testing for about 8 or 9 years now. So if he hadn't taken that pen testing course, he wouldn't have realized his true passion. So ways you can check that out is there's a lot of different webinars. If you're on LinkedIn, you can monitor LinkedIn to see these different webinars people are hosting, go to different B-sides conferences, different conferences, and attend some of the different workshops and talks and learn about the different roles in cybersecurity so you can find what you're truly passionate about.
You highlighted something that was very interesting, that the colleague of yours was in digital forensics, but took a pen testing course and fell in love with it. Oftentimes, there's so many transferable skills from your other roles, like your sysadmin roles, your firewall roles, that bleed into your ultimate skill set that you have once you finally get your passion role, and that makes it so much more valuable for you. What sort of skills and competencies do you feel that is a requirement to be a pen tester? And then which ones might be a nice to have?
Sure, I would say if you're going to be a traditional infrastructure or network type pen testing, and now we've gotten into cloud, so you need to learn a little cloud, but understanding operating systems at a sysadmin level. So you need to understand Windows and Linux. A lot of your web hosting resources are on Linux. A lot of your internal resources within companies are going to be Windows servers. There may still be some Linux. There's could be some Linux in some enterprise environments as well as maybe some Unix, but a lot of people have really moved over from Unix to Linux. But learning the operating systems, basic networking, and also too, another thing to look at is if, say, for instance, if you're wanting to be a pen tester, maybe you've been working as a software developer, maybe you're a web developer, maybe you're a quality assurance analyst that you're testing applications within a company, that QA skills is directly transferable over to web app pen testing because you're not only testing for bugs, you're testing for security flaws. So those are very transferable. So a lot of times I would advise people if you got any kind of IT experience, leverage that. So if you have a IT background, maybe you're a system administrator, network administrator, it's going to be easier to learn the infrastructure pen testing. Maybe you're working in cloud. So cloud pen testing may be the way for you to go. And nice to haves is one of the things the more people I interview on my podcast, one of the nice to haves is coding, knowing how to script or code. You can get into cybersecurity, you can function without it. But if you want to take things to the next level, be able to automate some stuff, then being able to do some Python scripting or some type of coding is very helpful. Not required to break into security, but helpful down the road. And the more people I talk to, the more I would encourage someone to try to learn Python, try to automate some of the things you do because someone that I learned that from how they got to where they're at and how they created OWASP Mass is Jeff Foley. Back in his network administrator days, he used to automate tasks. And so when he created a mass, it was a way to automate some of the things he was doing for open source intelligence. And you see a lot of people doing that. They come up with ways to automate jobs, things that they're doing, they're boring, less interesting to focus on interesting stuff and learn how to code or script and build these different automation platforms, scripts and programs to help them in their jobs.
So you mentioned a lot of automation, and with that, a lot of people think AI. What do you think AI helps or hurts the next generation coming into the workforce?
I think it's going to help. I think they just really need to learn how to do it the right way. And automation is not just AI. You have people using some Terraform, some of these other cloud automation infrastructure automations. So there's other automation and scripting. There's ways to using Terraform, other types of methods to spin up infrastructure for IT platforms. So there's other types of automation, but one of the things I would definitely, and one of the skills I really focus on for anyone coming up or new and anyone in general is to learn AI, learn generative AI so that we can help you write scripts. It's good for writing because there's been cases where I needed to write an outline for a conference talk and I would use it to get a rough draft. So one of the things about generative AI is you can't really lean on it to completely do everything for you unless you're really good at prompt engineering because even if you're an experienced professional, you can ask it to, I've even had it chat GPT to write my bio before, and there's things that it got wrong. So you can't totally trust it to be 100% correct, but it's a good way to use things. Even people are using it for coding now. And I think some of the tools like VS Code have AI built into it, but I would highly recommend learning that. Someone I used to work with at a company that was really amazing. They were our chief marketing officer, and this person was running a business outside of the day job. And he had several customers he was doing marketing stuff for because he was able to figure out how to automate this, know how to use the right prompts to prompt engineering to create all this content to be able to act as a force multiplier to be able to do more. And I think we all really need to work to do that so that way we're able to do more in less time. And one of my favorite quotes is, you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by someone that uses AI. So I definitely recommend someone learning AI to help them in their roles. Really, what grabbed my attention when ChatGPT first started getting popular a couple of years ago, someone had posted a script that they wrote with ChatGPT on Twitter, now X, and seeing the possibilities with it got me interested in it. So there's a lot of value there. People are using it, so I really think it's a good idea to learn how to use it. I've been watching some YouTube videos recently to help the marketing of my podcast and just help me in general. And a lot of the recommendations you're seeing is people are saying with AI to be a generalist. So maybe you can create some graphics with it, you can write content with it, maybe do some scripting, be able to do a little bit of everything. And that may really help you excel in your role. For instance, if you worked for a vendor like myself, maybe you could come up with some marketing stuff that you're able to leverage using AI, because sometimes you're not always an expert in that area. But I've talked to people like some of my friends like Jason Haddix that when forming his company, he needed to, or maybe it was his previous employer, he needed to create a legal document, and using the right prompts, he was able to get a really good document that he sent to their legal team, and they liked the content of that document. So if you really know how to tweak your prompts and really how to set the prompts up, you can get a lot of good out of it. So I would highly recommend using it. It's just going to be one of these things that everyone's going to use. And even like in the pen testing realm, people are got to figure out ways to scale what they're doing because there's just so much work and not enough people to help do it. Using things like AI and automation is a way to scale what you're doing.
I like that subtle notation that you should understand how it all works in order to fully automate it or to use AI to review it. So you still have to know what the AI is doing or have someone check, because if you don't know the code at all or the script at all, it could be doing something that you don't know. So uh,
Yes.
going back and double checking that, I would highly recommend folks do. But like you said, generative AI isn't perfect, but it definitely helps to use it. What other tips and tricks do you have for those folks that are either looking to grow in their career or expand into cybersecurity from a different field?
Sure. One of the things I would recommend too is on your learning journey, constantly learn, because one of the lessons learned I've seen and learned myself and saw through other of my peers is going through the industry is, you start out, a lot of us came from an on-prem world where the servers and network gear was all in the building. And then we're now more, where things are getting to be more cloud. And some people waited and hesitated too long. But if you keep up with technology like AI, and a while back, the Web3 was pretty popular. If you keep a finger on the pulse and constantly to keep learning new things, don't let yourself stagnate. So that way you're constantly learning, because you never can tell when you may learn, you may be able to do pen test large learning models, and there's not a ton of people doing that. So that kind of gives you an edge. And that's one of the things, especially for people newly transitioning, trying to break into cybersecurity or trying to move into other areas. If you understand more of the newer technologies, then that's going to help you over someone that's maybe been doing it 10 or 20 years, but really haven't progressed much because they either got bored. Some people do things long enough, they work in different parts of the industry or different fields, they kind of get burnt out after a while. So keeping up with that, and the other recommendation I would make is networking. Really leverage your networking. And networking goes beyond LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good starting point, but you also need to leverage in-person events, because the bigger your audience, the more followers you get, and then also the quality of your brand makes a difference. So some people are purely online, but make sure you're going out and meeting people at these conferences, because the more people you meet, the easier it's going to help you to get jobs. Because one of the things I've done, it's helped me get jobs for my networking. It's also helped me help other people get jobs. I had some people that were trying to break into pen testing that I knew when I was teaching at the college. People would come to me looking for junior pen testers. They'd ask if I knew anyone, and always keep in mind people outside of my classroom, because any people in the community that might have recently graduated from college, knew their skill set and knew they would be able to fit in those kind of roles. and have been able to recommend some of them and help them get jobs. So make sure you're networking. And when you go to places, maybe you're shy, but get out and try to talk to people, introduce yourself, tell them what you're doing. If you're going to college, you let them know your status, you're a student, whatever you're trying to break into cybersecurity, and let them know what you're interested in because a lot of cases they can help you. Not everyone has the time to do mentoring all the time or spend tons of time in mentoring, but for the most part, most people I've seen in the industry are wanting to help someone and be able to help people out like that by referring them for jobs. Another thing to take in consideration too is a lot of companies have hiring bonuses. So if you're able to help someone get hired, that's a hiring bonus. So not only if they benefit from just being a good person, they could possibly benefit financially for recommending you. And if you're reaching out to someone on Instagram, on LinkedIn, make sure that you have a sentence, get something together, your thoughts together. I see people do this a lot of times that are looking for help. They'll just start out with hello. And it's you get a lot of people get a lot of messages in their inbox. You don't have time to sometimes you don't have all the time to go back and forth out with them to get that out of them. So if you're connecting with someone, let them know, yeah, I'm a student. I just graduated. I'm getting ready to graduate. I'm interested in bug bounties and I've done this so far. Can you give me some advice? And that'll get you a lot more. Give them some context. That way they're able to help you out more because a lot of these folks have busy inboxes. And so you want to make the most of that opportunity.
So you mentioned that you've written some books. What's the latest book that you wrote you would want people to go out and check out?
So for me, it's only been one book so far. I've got a couple other ideas that I've got to get in gear and work on. But the Pentester Blueprint, I am the concept creator and co-author of that book. But that book is based on it was my college lecture, but it was also I gave that talk many times at conferences. And each time I give conference talks, I take the questions I get and refine the talk, add things to it, change my approach. And so that's also based on advice that I gave people that are trying to break into pen testing. So that's a really good place to start. It doesn't teach you how to pen test. So it's not going to teach you how to use the tools, but it's going to lay out what prerequisite knowledge you need before pursuing a pen testing career, some of the different certifications that are helpful and things like home labs. So it's a really good place for someone wanting to break into cybersecurity to go through that before they start taking courses and studying.
Well, I'm going to keep my ear out for those other ideas that you have, and maybe we'll collaborate on a book in the future. I've written a couple books myself. The latest one is Hack the Cybersecurity Interview, which, similar to you at pen testing, we kind of took several different career journeys within the cybersecurity field and discussed some of the concerns, some of the things that you need to address when talking to a hiring manager, resources to consider, things like that. Like you, I love to help support others. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And where can folks find you and network with you?
So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, just under my name, Philip Wiley, and I'm on X, formerly Twitter, under Philip Wiley, and as well as Instagram. And you can find my podcast on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. It's the Philip Wiley Show. And also on my YouTube channel, I recorded my lectures for a full semester, my lectures at Dallas College on pen testing. And at that time, my course textbook was based on the Pen Test Plus. So not only do I do lectures, I do some demos, some hacking demos and pen testing demos in the class. So that's a free resource out there for people to check out.
Okay, perfect. Send me all those links. I'll have them in the show notes. So that way folks can check out. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks as